This is Rennie Knopf with ChampionshipBBQ.tv, and you're listening to the Barbecue Central Show.
From my heart and from my hand, why don't people understand my intention?
Happy to have you aboard here for the really big barbecue show.
We cook because we have to, and we grill because we want to.
Fine, how's it going?
You have a great show. I'm a big fan. So what seems to be the problem here? This man looks like he's dead, and he's in the crackle.
Charbono! It's all about the Charbono, dude!
Succulent fish! What?
He ate 54 wieners.
But listen, Lavernius, shake a face.
I'm shaking like a dog shit peach seeds.
You could use it to fight off creeping marauders looking to take your steaks off your grills.
I just like being anywhere with Junior, Senior, and Diva.
Sounds like a whole other type of movie.
Wow. Yeah, really. Keep it hot, keep it clean, keep it lubricated.
We have top men working on it right now. Ooh, top men.
Hey everybody, welcome to the second hour. It's the After Dark portion of the show, and this is the Barbecue Central radio show, broadcasting live and direct from Cleveland, Ohio, the barbecue capital of the North Coast. 877-448-0433. Greg at the bbqcentralshow.com is the email address. Again, thanks to my first hour guest, Randy Owen from ThermoWorks. Also, thanks to Robin Medlin, Grill Girl, for talking about, oh, you son of a monkey. Look, just about sick and tired of this automation. Anyway, thanks to Robin Medlin for coming on, talking about the candied bacon recipe, blah, blah, blah. Very good stuff, as always, with her, so we'll look for her next month as well. So, I don't know, what else? What did you get? What'd you get for Christmas? I got some cool stuff. Got some socks. Got some aftershave. You don't think you get this face by not properly moisturizing after you shave, right? Guys, if you're not moisturizing after you shave, you're not hurting me. You're hurting yourself. You don't have a problem with me. You have a problem with yourself, okay? So definitely want to moisturize after you do that. Looks like Josh got coal. Hey, Josh, guess what? On Christmas, it's not a bad thing. It's not. I don't know what else to say about that, but getting coal, that's a good thing. You can be bad all year around in order to get coal. Then you can fire your cookers. It's awesome. It's well-reasoned, actually, if you actually think about it. Financially, here you're getting free charcoal. It's getting better than that. I don't know what to tell you. All right, let's go ahead and see if we can't chase down this Chris Marks fella. And we'll be talking some barbecue with him. Next week, we have some great things lined up. We're going to get Brad Barrett from GrillGrate.com. He's got a great product. If you've never seen it before, Grill Grate. Very cool item, so go ahead and check that out. Also chasing Ted Reeder to make his monthly appearance. Ted, always a fan favorite. God Grace recipes that always include some form of Jack Daniels, no doubt. Also, we're going to have Jim Stansel, who is making a run for the Kansas City Barbecue Society's Board of Directors. And who knows what's going to fall out next week as well. So that's what you have coming up for next week. Let's go ahead and race over to the hotline where we find our second hour guest, Pitmaster of Three Little Pig Barbecue, General Manager of Ace of Hearts Barbecue, Chris Marks, joining us here on the show. Chris, how are you, buddy?
Hey, doing great.
Chris, appreciate you taking time out to talk to me tonight about barbecue in general. Chris's contact information for those folks that are interested, aceofheartsbbq.com is the website. And then if you're a Twitter person, you can follow him at Good One Smoker. So, are you a big Twitter guy, Chris? Is it just something you're just kind of getting into, or what's the deal?
Oh, absolutely. I come from an IT background, and I love social networking and love using it.
So that is at Good One Smoker. So, Chris, for the people that might not have a background on you, why don't you go ahead and tell us kind of how you got started just in barbecue in general, and then when you decided to step up and start actually competing?
Well, actually, barbecue in general was started by my dad back in the late 80s, and he was a senior VP at Hallmark, and when he retired, my mom basically said, find him something to do. And basically started from there. One of the original KCBS guys, they started doing contests in Raytown, Missouri. And from there, we started 1 or 2 contests a year as the Three Little Pigs. And then from there, it just escalated on and on and on. And eventually, we're up to a 35-foot RV, traveling the country doing barbecue contests.
So when you look back on the days, Chris, what did you start out with? Were you on something that was a little bit bigger than you needed, or were you just using some bare-bones stuff when you were competing?
Oh, man, when we started, it was just the bare-bones stuff. It was the cheap smoker. We call them the COSs, the cheap old smokers that you buy at the big box. And we pretty much developed everything on the cheap old smokers. And then we migrated up into our first original smoker was an Oklahoma Joe. Mm-hmm. And then from there, we moved into the Goodwin smoker line.
We're going to get into the Goodwin smoker here certainly in just a little bit, given that's some of your business dealings. But, you know, as you've seen competition barbecue evolve over the years, Chris, what do you think what are some of the biggest changes that you've seen from when you got into it to where it's evolved to today?
Well, basically the biggest change is, of course, the money. Ever since they keep dropping in more and more cash, it has a tendency to drive it into a different level, into a different type of people really into the competition.
Do you think it's good or bad for the sport?
You know, it's hard to say for me because, you know, I'm really so tied into it. But I think with the bigger contest, it's taken into a much different. When Gary Wells really put this together, I don't think he meant it to be like a big NASCAR type event. But it's actually gone there to where you have big sponsors, you have big contests, and pretty much a lot of them you pushed out that small hobbyist.
Is there a place where you could build, you know, more of a, I guess, what a Gary Wells and a Carolyn Wells had envisioned, you know, 25 plus years ago when they put KCBS together to allow the people that might be getting eked out kind of a place to go? Or do you still think that regardless of how big it has gotten, you still have the ability to pay that entry fee, make your way to wherever that contest is going to be, and take part over the weekend with some of the best cooks out there in the country?
Absolutely. I think what I think is anybody could win at any time. I've seen guys come in, you know, that have gone to my classes and, you know, gone to 1 or 2 classes, coming in and win a contest. And again, it's just a method and technique and understanding what they need to turn in and timing and just making everything look really, really good.
Chris Marks, general manager of Ace of Hearts Barbecue. That's a Goodwin smoker joining us here on the show. Chris, you're an 8-time grand champ at the American Royal Barbecue, well known, especially for people that follow competition barbecue, one of the biggest events during the course of the year. For you personally, how do you compare this event to any of the other ones that you'll take place in during the course of a year?
When you look at the American Royal, we've always looked at it like the Super Bowl of barbecue, because there's no limitations on who can show up and who can be there. You're cooking against all the champions. This is the invitational, of course, of all the champions across the world. You know, you're not limited. You come in there and it's a big shootout. Whereas the Open, you have about 600 teams there, including usually the other 150 that are in the invitational. And a lot of times you don't see the guys who win the invitational win the Open, because it is such a crapshoot with 600 teams there. You've just got to be super consistent.
Is it more consistent or is it more luck in the Open?
Well, we won the Open back to back. And, you know, it really comes down to we cook very, very consistent. And one of the Opens, we didn't even have a ribbon, but we were a consistent score across 17. But again, you've always got to play luck into every contest. Every contest is going to have some kind of luck into it. You've got to end up on the right table. You've got to have 6 good judges that like your stuff.
You know, one of the conversations that I like to get into, especially for folks that have either taken part in the American Royal or in your case who have actually won it, there's obviously another very big barbecue competition that takes place just a mere 2-3 weeks after the American Royal, and that's the Jack Daniel's World Championship Barbecue. How do you feel about the Jack? Do you think that the American Royal has more credential behind it to say that, you know, if you win that one, you're the best cook that year? Or is there something to this whole mystique of the Jack and the drawing process? And, you know, granted, it's not a sanctioned contest for a particular sanctioning body. It's independent. Where do you weigh out on the whole Jack talk?
Well, we've been to the Jack, actually been invited 10 times, and we've been 7. What I say about the Jack is the limitation of the teams you cook against. You know, whereas the American Royal, everything's open to every champion who comes in. And you take a look at Jack Daniel's, and, you know, it's when I'm cooking, I'm looking at the 2 different contests. I'm always going to go to the American Royal because it's got a lot more, as we feel, up in our area, a lot more prestige to it. And it's just a lot harder. It's the American Royal's the toughest contest to cook in, and everybody pretty much knows it. And the Jack Daniel's pretty much limits you to 50 teams across the states.
Do you cook in all the sanctioning bodies, Chris, or do you just particularly stay with KCBS style?
I've cooked in I've cooked Memphis in May, loved it. Great contest in Memphis in May. Cooked KCBS, and I cooked Lone Star.
Do you like KCBS the best?
Arizona.
Or do you have a favorite?
KCBS. But I do really like the Lone Star, too, because of no garnish. And you just pretty much put it into the box. And, again, it's a double blind where you pull tickets. But it's a nice run. They run very, very good contests, too.
There's always that conversation with folks that are within the KCBS, whether they're making particular board runs or if they're just cooks out there talking about what they like, what they don't like about those competition rules at any given point. Garnish is one of those things that comes up. As somebody who takes part in KCBS competitions and somebody who's done very well, you're a cook, would you rather see the KCBS garnish taken out or perhaps taken off at least the optional status that it's remained in forever and either say, look, it's out, so forget about it, or every team has to do it and make a mandatory rule?
Well, the way I look at this is garnish has been there forever, and it's probably going to always be there forever because it has a tendency to tie more of the creative side into it. My mom was probably one of the best she could make the best boxes in the country, and I tell you what, she took a lot of pride into it, and I see that as more of a creative type.
Chris Marks joining us here. He's the general manager of Ace of Hearts Barbecue, 8-time winner of the American Royal. Website, aceofheartsbbq.com. You can follow him on Twitter, @GoodOneSmoker. You've seen a lot, Chris, go down in competition barbecue, so if we can ask you to be pontificator for a moment.
Pontificate, I love it.
Yeah, where do you see the future of barbecue 5, 10, 15 years down the road? Something similar to what we're seeing now, bigger, or perhaps will it contract a bit?
I see it bigger. I see it absolutely as probably one of the premier growing hobbies in the country. I see it more as 5 to 10 years down the line. I see the teams carrying big sponsors. I would probably see it as a startup NASCAR, where you're going to have the sponsors. You're going to have 15 to 20 to 30 power teams traveling the country with big time sponsors.
Is there how do I want to put this delicately? It's growing. There's no doubt about it. The competition barbecue is growing, but with the sponsorships and all of this big money, and obviously you're not the first person that's told me similar ideas as far as the future is concerned, but is there enough excitement that happens during the course of a cook to actually garner that kind of attention, that kind of sponsorship and money for those 13, 15, 20 teams?
I say absolutely. As the hobby grows, just like it did with NASCAR, you're going to start to see major sponsors, maybe big pork producers, beef, basically jumping onto the bandwagon. We just see it as such a growing hobby, and it's really started in the Midwest, but I see it once doing classes across the country, it's actually just blowing up. I just see more and more people interested in it.
All right, so that's a good segue, actually, to talk about one of the other things that you're involved in, which is obviously Ace of Hearts Barbecue, and that being the Good One Smoker. A lot of people that are in barbecue would love to find some way to turn the hobby and the passion into something that they can actually make a living off of. You're obviously one of the lucky ones to do that in a number of different ways. How are you able to parlay the whole barbecue thing into this Ace of Hearts Barbecue and Good One Smoker?
Oh man, that's a story. That's a story in itself. Basically, I turned the hobby into a job, and sometimes I wonder if it's a mistake. I was an IT guy for 25 years, so really about 3 years ago, I was asked to be the general manager for Ace of Hearts Barbecue Specialties and build a specialty company based off the Good One Smoker. So we're able to basically build a whole product line, smokers. We use smokers, we have lump charcoals, we have woods, we have, of course, the Three Little Pig sauces and rubs, and we tie it all together, and we move it around the country to barbecue dealers.
For the folks that perhaps aren't as up to speed on what the Good One Smoker is, give us an idea, and obviously, you can go to Ace of Hearts, bbq.com to get a visual on these things, but for people who don't have that access right now that might be listening on their iPads or iPhones or whatever the case may be, kind of paint us a mental picture of what it looks like, and then kind of tell us what some of the hot selling points are, or why someone would want to consider a Good One Smoker as they're reviewing what's for sale out there in the market.
Absolutely. Well, the first thing, it's not pretty. The Good One Smoker is not pretty. And what it is basically a barn-shaped type smoker, and it is a total charcoal smoker, and it is a reverse offset, which means that our smoker box ties right back into the charcoal box, which means I have complete lateral temperature back and forth across the whole smoker, which basically gives us no hot spots, gives us complete consistent cooking across the whole smoker, and it also allows us to build long cook times in. We can usually get about 4 to 6 hours on an open range, which is a small entry-level smoker, on just 10 pounds of charcoal. So we are an engineered smoker, whereas a lot of the other tube smokers are gas pipeline. We're an actually press-broke smoker. We spend the time to engineer it out correctly.
So who came up with the idea for the Good One Smoker originally? Is it something that you are sharing in partnership with somebody? Did somebody that come up with the concept? Where does it kind of get born
Absolutely. The smoker was invented by Ron Goodwin out of Burns, Kansas in 1988. And in 2006, Joseph Rately bought the smoker line and the distribution lines from Ron. Ron's son, Larry, still builds the smokers in Goodwin down in Burns, Kansas.
You've been around a lot of smokers. You've seen a lot, whether you've owned them or not, or whether you've used them or not in competitions. But as far as for somebody in the backyard or for somebody that's actually out there doing it weekend in, weekend out on the competition scene, what do you like personally, separate the business side out if you could possibly can, but what do you like personally about the Good One Smoker, and why do you think it's a good way to go?
Well, basically, I like it because I can set it and forget it. I cook on, primarily when I do competitions, I cook on a chuck wagon trailer, which is a rodeo smoker, the big smoker. And I'm able to place the meat like I like them. I can place a complete competition run of meat on the smoker and pretty much set it and forget it and let it go. And that's so important when you're in a smoker, because the longer you can set and let that meat relax, the better. So I don't have to play with my smokers a lot. And that's so important when you're really trying to get a great competition.
Chris Marks joining us, General Manager of Ace of Hearts Barbecue. Chris, how many different models are there to choose from on the Good One Smoker?
We basically have 5 patio models that are you're able to choose from. The entry levels are Pony Express. It's about a $799 smoker, small smoker, 24-inch back offset. Then we move into the open range, which is a 30-inch. A lot of the competition guys use what we call the Marshall, which is a 36 by 24, and it has 4 trays in it. And then, of course, the larger model is the Rodeo, which is more of a commercial-type model, but a lot of the competition guys use it, too, because it has the 4 trays.
And what are the price points for those other ones?
Price points start at about $7.99 for the Pony Express, $11.99 for the open range, $24.99 for the Marshall, and $29.99 for the Rodeo. And they're big iron. These are big, high-quality smokers, and they're lifetime buys.
I was just going to say, I mean, we're looking at kind of a lifetime run out of these cookers, something you're going to be able to hand down to somebody next that's interested in taking over the barbecue reins?
Absolutely, and we see a lot of that. We see a lot of guys going and purchasing the open ranges, and then the next thing you know, they're passing the open range down to their son and buying Marshalls.
Do you have any idea how many teams out there are currently using the Good One smoker in a competition setting? Is it kind of on the rise?
It's definitely on the rise because we're selling a lot of smokers. We're pushing a lot of smokers out the door. You know, you wouldn't think, at this time of the year we'd be, shipping 15 to 20 Marshalls out a week, but that's about what's been happening. But as far as the competition guys, I can really gauge at like the American Royal and Lenexa Barbecue Contest. We'll see about 40 to 50% of the teams have at least one Good One smoker on their site.
Do you see a lot of teams using multiple cookers nowadays?
Oh, yeah. We're seeing more and more teams use multiple cookers because a lot of the different teams will have different teammates. So one guy wants to use his Good One guy wants to use his Weber kettle. So the more people have and what they're used to cooking on is usually what we see coming in. When we see single teams, like, you have a husband and a wife, we'll see like a Marshall and a Rodeo. But a lot of different teammates because of the cost of it anymore. A lot of guys work together, and they all bring their own smokers.
Chris Marks joining us here after dark on the Barbecue Central radio show. Chris, are there any accessories that you would recommend somebody to get when they're buying the Good One smoker, or is this just something you buy the smoker and, obviously the fuel, and you're kind of off and running?
Okay, pretty much it's the fuel. You're off and running. You basically... if you buy a Good One smoker, you pull it off ready to smoke. There's no building it. There's no, you don't have to do anything to it. You can just basically pull it off the pallet and cook on it. You do have to season it up. That's about the only thing we ask. And just like doing an old iron fry pan, just put a little Pam on it and start it up, and it takes care of itself. Again, there's not a lot to it to go wrong. That's what we've built in. That's how we've engineered these smokers. We want them to be as easy as possible to use. We have a single damper system that runs the whole length of the firebox. That's how you control your heat. It's just easy. We've engineered it to be easy. We've engineered it for longevity of the charcoal, and again, we want it just easy because people make things way too complex, and these smokers can make you look like a hero in about a week.
And you're just going to go ahead and mix in like wood chunks for the smoke flavor with the charcoal?
Yeah, the great thing about the Good One smoker is the way the smoker works. We basically set it up. If you look at that smoker, it looks like a convection oven. Mm-hmm. So what we do is we use primarily lump charcoal. We like lump charcoal because it burns hot, it burns long, and it's pure. Then all we have to do is we usually add 1 or 2 chunks about the size of our fist, and we call that our flavor enhancers. That would be cherry, that would be peach, that would be apple, that would be pecan or hickory. Some similar wood to that. We just use it as an enhancer instead of the heat source. So that charcoal is our heat source, and we're enhancing with the flavor woods.
Chris Marks joining us here on the show. Chris, also, aside from the Good One smoker, and I guess I should ask this, at capacity, I mean, how many of these cookers can you turn out in a week or turn out in a month?
Well, we can turn out quite a few of them because of we're actually based, their smokers are built in Burns, Kansas, so they're constantly building smokers for us at all times. That's a hard one to answer. So, we could probably pump, 75 out a week.
And you're selling through distribution channels as well. So if I went to my specialty place up there by my buddy Stephen DeFranco, the jeweler, they could potentially be somebody. Yeah. Okay. So that's cool. And
what we do is we sell through distributors, and we have one internet provider that does our internet work, and we have 84 dealers now spread out across the United States. And what we do is we sell through those dealers, but what we do different from everybody else is we support those dealers heavily. We support those dealers through demos, through classes. We train them up, not on just the Goodwin smoker line, but on barbecue in general. We talk about, getting involved in organizations about, how are we going to build the barbecue in the area? Because so many of the other type vendors just drop the product and run. We want to develop the area. We look for the A-plus dealers. We look for the guys who have a passion to do it because, as we build the territory, that's going to give everybody else in the hobby, that's going to give them somewhere to go to get the quality woods, get the quality charcoals, to listen to somebody who knows how to do this. And it also gives them the ability to get sauces, rubs, everything else to give it a great barbecue experience.
And these dealers will have like multiple items, or are they having to order through the dealer and then through you to get their particular unit?
Most of them, what we recommend is they keep product on the floor because people want to see it, people want to touch it, people want to smell it. The other thing we recommend to these dealers, and 99% of them do it, is they usually have demos. And those demos they can lend to the people to use, or they'll show them how to cook on them, or they're cooking on them while people are coming in. So they're trying to create that barbecue experience with the demos.
Speaking of barbecue experiences, we're talking with Chris Marks. You also do barbecue cooking classes. Is this just something that you decided to do to support the Goodwin Smoker? Were you doing classes before you actually got into the whole general managership of Ace of Hearts?
Actually, I was doing classes before. What it is when I developed my class structure, I developed it with a big dealer in Kansas City, Backyard Bash, out of Parkville, Missouri. And what he came to me, he was a brand new store. He says, "Hey, man, I need to figure out a way to get people come into my store. I need to figure out how to get people to start buying the stuff that I'm selling. You've won all kinds of stuff, and, I'd never even really thought about doing classes before." And he says, "Why don't you put me together a class?" And we called it Barbecue 101, and it just took off from there. I now do classes coast to coast, and I could pretty much do a class every weekend somewhere.
So
my wife would let me.
Yeah, well, you know what they say, Chris: happy wife, happy life.
Absolutely.
Who is the class geared towards? It's Barbecue 101. So, I mean, are you having competition guys taking your class? Do you have a separate competition class that you hook up? What's the deal?
Well, first of all, when I put these classes together, I took a look at the really big picture. And I said, you know what? There's a limited number of competition guys out there. But, when I go to these competitions, I see these guys just looking star-crossed. What am I doing? How am I doing it? I don't even know how to start a fire. I don't even know a simple method and technique. So what I've done is I developed, basically Barbecue 101 is more focused on the hobbyist. Somebody wanting to step in to the hobby, learn how to do it correctly. I teach method, I teach technique. I say, here's the kind of smokers, here's what you really need to get to where this product's going to be 2 to 3 years advanced from where you are right now.
So if I'm looking to take a class, I see you're going to be in town, as you are actually going to be out here in Cleveland. I believe it was in April or towards the end of April. How much is the cost, and how long is the class, day-wise, or is just one day? What's the deal?
Well, great question, too. Now, that was the next thing, was the costing of the class. And, again, I looked at the people who are doing this class, and they charge anywhere between $75 up to $125 for these classes. And these classes go for about 4 to 5 hours. But I tell you what, they are hands-on. You get a slab of ribs. You get to prepare your own slab of ribs. We talk you through it. I want you to taste it. I want you to touch it. I want you to smell it and feel it. And what we do is the ribs that you prepare, you take home for homework. Basically, you take them home to the wife and say, "Hey, look, I really did go.
That's right. We weren't at the bar drinking all day.
Right, exactly.
So when they're taking it home or when you have these people in class, and now that you've done a number of these classes for so long, especially for the backyard guys that are coming in, not necessarily the people that are competing, what's your gauge on, and I'm asking to be kind of, this is probably a little bit of a vague question, but that's all right. What's the general knowledge of these folks coming in? Do they think that Tony Roma's or a fall off the bone rib where you could actually pick a bone out of a rack of rib is what they're shooting for? I mean, are they kind of, on that teetering edge of what the general public thinks a good rib is?
Well, that's a great question about the ribs, because we've been brought up anymore because of marketing, as I call it, that everybody wants a falling off the bone rib. And like I know, that's well overdone. We don't want those. But yeah, a lot of them come in thinking that. And that's one of the first things we talk about is the correct things. How do we correctly cook ribs? How do we correctly smoke the ribs? And I talk a lot about the foundations, and I have 3 really important foundations. One being the quality of the meat, the other being the charcoals and the woods that you use, and then the other foundation is going to be the whole cooking process, how we cook the whole thing through. What finish temperatures do we get to? What's overdone? What's underdone? How can we escalate temperatures? How can we slow them down? So that's the type of method and technique that I teach.
So when you talk about quality of meat, Chris, and this is fascinating to me, you have big box, I call them like the big box stores like a Sam's or a BJ's or a Costco's, or whatever you have out there. And then you have, at least for me, and perhaps I'm a little bit more in the minority, and I know I'm lucky, I have a bunch of really good butchers that I could go to here in the Cleveland area.
Uh-huh.
What do you suggest? Do you visit the butchers? Is the meat that I can get at a Costco's or a Sam's going to be the same that I'm going to get at the butchers? What's your take on that whole deal?
Well, my whole take on this is when I'm cooking for my family, I'm cooking catering, I'm cooking something like that. It's usually big box. Now, if I'm cooking competition, I work with a company out of Emporia called Fan and Steel Meats, and they'll get me my Creekstone, they'll get me my Breckenridge, they'll get me all the stuff that I use for competition, because I use a different type of meat for competition. I'll use more of a premium grade, but they allow me to pick what I want. Actually, they know what I want, so they always have it waiting for me. But that's where you talk to your butcher, and what you really have to do is you have to weigh the good with the bad. It's going to cost you a lot more for that butcher, but if you can get a guaranteed quality out of it, sure, go with the butcher. But, to shoot you straight, I've won with stuff from Sam's Club, and I've won with stuff from butchers. And it gets really difficult anymore to really tell the difference.
The other
I hate to say that.
Well, I mean, I think that's kind of a way we're going right now. The other step to that was obviously the fuel or the charcoal that you had mentioned. You obviously said you're a big fan of lump charcoal. As you look at who dominates the charcoal industry right now, I mean, it is Kingsford. It has been Kingsford for pretty much since the 1920s when it started or whatever. There's a lot of other charcoal purveyors out there, whether they're being named from another manufacturer, might be a little bit more prevalent in the industry. Are there manufacturers that you would say, look, stay away from this particular brand because it doesn't run well or it's not going to give you that consistency as something that you would look for to fuel your cooker?
Well, what I recommend on that is if you have any questions on your fuel, which you should at all times, have you ever heard of the website, The Naked Whiz?
Yes.
Go back there and let them review the charcoal, because I tell you what, they review it straight across. There's no marketing there. They're going to tell you what's good and what's bad.
NakedWhiz.com. I love that website, by the way.
Yeah, I do too. They do a great job. And I think our charcoal's rated 13th or 14th out of 80 or 90, and very happy with that.
Chris Marks joining us. Go ahead.
Oh, because, again, it's public. The public tells you what they like about it and what they don't. So it's all based off really true thoughts, but, of course, some of those can be competitors too. But take a look at the Naked Whiz, because that charcoal is so, so important, and I can't stress that more. if you want that premium product, use premium charcoal.
Chris Marks joining us, aceofheartsbbq.com, the website. He's a general manager over there. Chris, let me ask you a couple of questions here before we call it a night. We'll kind of steer it over to the competition side just a little bit for this question. You know, there's a lot of competition classes out there right now. They really seem to have sparked up probably over the last 3 or 4 years. As someone out there who still competes and is, from what I understand, perhaps you're flown in from time to time as like that hired gun to help a team out if they're so in need. Are you a fan of these competition barbecue cooking classes being put on by the teams that are out there kind of winning on a consistent basis?
Well, now, the one thing to understand, if I was cooking full-time and I was doing a competition class, I wouldn't be telling you everything. And that's just me shooting you guys straight. The other thing is, you know, you got to catch, and I see their point too, is you got to catch it when they're hot. You know, I'm doing well. You know, I'm doing a competition class, you know, but pretty much what I've seen now across the competition classes, and I hear everybody going to them because a lot of them come tell me exactly what goes on in the competition classes, is everybody's teaching the same thing. So everybody's cooking exactly the same. Everybody's doing the same thing to chicken. Everybody's doing the same thing to pork. And see, that sort of takes some of the originality out of it. And when I judge, if I see everybody come in across my plate using the same sauce, same rub, I tell you what, I'm not happy.
That was actually going to be my next question that you've kind of dovetailed nicely into, which was, do you see a trending towards the winning flavor profiles becoming overused at competitions now? And do you think that teams or the best teams will continue to kind of tweak their stuff in order to stay ahead of the pack? Or perhaps, conversely, do you run a risk if you're a top team with a flavor profile that you've taught to hundreds and hundreds of people over the course of a year or two? Do you run the risk if you tweak it to then get away from what gives you the best chance of winning?
Well, good point. You bring up a really, really good point here. And the one thing we've always known is it's cyclic. Okay, they run in about 5-year cycles. And, you know, we dominated for years on a flavor profile. But we start to see that profile change. We adapted to it. And we pretty much dominated winning for about 10 years. And then once my mom and dad passed away, I just sort of stepped out of it because I really didn't have a lot of desire once they had gone. But you bring up a good point. We always tweaked. You know, we always kept our eyes open. We always, you know, we would judge. We'd go in and judge, and we'd see what's winning, and we'd say, hey, you know, we're a little more hickory. People are looking for a little bit more hickory. But one of the most important things is, you know, they do judging classes. And what are those judges being taught?
Is that is that a potential issue?
Yes, that is a potential issue because it takes a lot of the originality out of it.
So, you know, let's use KCBS for an example because they're the biggest sanctioning body out there. If somebody is teaching you, it does almost seem awkward that or weird that somebody's teaching you what's good because you have a palate of your own. Inherently, as much as you probably try to stifle any type of personal preference that you may have, we're human beings. So is it, if you're going to get into it, you're just going to have to deal with the fact that no matter how hard people try, personal preferences are going to enter in, whether they're saying it or not, and this is just something that you're going to have to come to terms with?
Absolutely, because I tell you what, the personal preferences are always going to be there because you're going to have experienced judges like I am. You can tell me what's good, and I'm going to tell you it's not. If I have somebody training me and saying, well, this is good, well, no, it's not because I don't like it. Because it tastes the same. We call it sameness. Everything's the same, which has a tendency to be real boring.
So how does a team stay ahead of the curve then? Do they have to make the tweaks and attend those classes, as you say, or are we running into a point where things just might become too vanilla and now we're at kind of this weird crossroads or vacillation point?
I call it the crossroads and the vacillation point. And I'm glad you brought it up because that's what I'm seeing now is with everybody teaching the same in the competition side, I see a lot of sameness across. And you know what? It's going to get boring. So somebody's going to have to break out with some original thoughts. Going to have to, we're just going to have to take it up to another level.
Does it show, perhaps, that the sport itself is popular? But then, of course, it is also recognized that it's going to cost you a decent chunk of change to go out and compete for the course of a weekend. So for the teams that are trying to perhaps not only outcook but maybe outsmart some of the other teams, they go take these cooking classes and they're going to drop $500, $600, $700 from some of the top teams that are out there in whatever sanctioning body to ramp up their learning curve even quicker. So they're going to apply what they learned in a class, and you got a number of other teams doing it out here. I mean, what's the cure to get away from all of it? Is it going to take somebody to do something drastic in order to get the profiles to start changing, or what?
Yeah, it's going to take one of those teams that you're the high end competition teams that are teaching to start changing the flavor profiles, because you'll start with somebody with 20 in a class, and then that 20 tells another 20, and then it just escalates on itself, and word of mouth. And again, we've got to get away from the sameness, and that's what's going to start it, is somebody coming in, being original, saying, hey, let's start doing this. And then, as more and more people start doing it, more and more people are going to start to like it. But ever since the advent of the judging classes, we've sort of seen a swing in, everything's pretty much gone back to what we call is just, straight across the board, no originality. Everybody's the same. So, who's best and who's not, the line's just really diluted anymore.
Do you think that's why perhaps Harry Sue out of Slap Yo Daddy Barbecue there in California might have been able to do so well this year? I mean, obviously he's got a method down. He knows how to cook the meat, but because his flavor profiles might be a little bit more obscure than what's winning out there, that maybe he's capturing kind of the attention as we've been alluding to here for the last few minutes.
Yep. Because what we've always seen is, we see a lot different cooking out on the West Coast than we do in the Midwest and East Side. They have a tendency to use more fruity type stuff. They have a tendency to be more original out in California. But you're right. He's probably catching something there that nobody else is catching.
So if I were to stroke you a check for $1,000 today and told you that you could go spend that money only to buy a barbecue competition cooking class, would you take it or would you leave it?
I would probably leave it for another year or two to really see where it's going. Probably to see where it's going.
Chris Marks joining us. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I would just probably see it another year before, it really starts, the lines start to become a little straighter.
Is there any team or two or three that you see out there right now in any sanctioning body that you think is going to start to hit really big here over the next few years?
Well, I see Pellet Envy as pretty much as the driver for the sponsorships types. I see him as really being the guy who's going to develop the sponsorship line. As far as really, really good teams, of course, the Sioux team, the Harry Sue team, he's really good. Rhythm and Q out of Arizona, he's really good cooker too. I've spent quite a bit of time down there with him. And, of course, Darren Worth, one of my good friends out of Iowa. And if he could just get away from that restaurant, he can get back into cooking a lot heavier.
I mean, was it just me this year, or did you see a number of all of a sudden really good competition cooking teams coming out of the great state of Iowa?
Oh, yeah. Iowa's always been strong. I've always commented on Iowa, especially the Iowa Barbecue Society. They've always done such a great job up there, and they've always been they're good people too, very good people up there, and very, very good cooks. Always have been, and always put some of the best contests on. And, we've been doing contests for 20-plus years, and some of the best ones have been up there in Iowa. And, we're like 3 hours away from it. But we would run up to do contests in Iowa all the time, just because they're good people, and they always put on such a great contest.
Chris Marks is breaking it all down for us. He is the general manager over at the Ace of Hearts Barbecue. Again, that website, aceofheartsbbq.com. You can follow him on Twitter at GoodOneSmoker. Chris, is there like a 800 number people could call and get some information that way as well?
Oh, it's better just to call our direct number. It's 816-471-13333 and ask for Chris Marks.
All right, there he is, weighing in on competition barbecue as he saw it. The Good One Smoker and his barbecue competition cooking classes. It is Chris Marks from Ace of Hearts Barbecue. Chris, I appreciate the time tonight and the insight. Continued success.
And thank you very much.
All right, take care. There he is, Chris Marks. Wow. Lots to react to. First of all, let me say this. Finally nice to see somebody sack up and give his thoughts on, look, if you're a fan of the show and you hear me talk to these competition barbecuers, what's one of the 2 or 3 questions I'm always asking everybody? How did you get in? What about these cooking classes? And do you think that the teaching of cooking classes is vanillaing the product that is being delivered out there right now? A lot of people aren't saying no. A lot of people aren't saying yes. So that leads me to believe there's a looming gray area. So for somebody of Chris's stature to come on and say, look, things aren't going well right now for the way flavor profiles are happening out there in the competition scene, I think that says a lot. I think that's very way to man up and really kind of put it out there in the honest fashion that he did. So Chris is actually going to be in Cleveland April 29th and 30th doing 2 classes. Not sure if that's going to be over on the west side. So if you're kind of local to Cleveland, go ahead and check him out. And again, his contact information is aceofheartsbbq.com. You can follow him on Twitter at goodonesmoker.com. Loud. Or you can call him directly, as he said, 816-471-1333. Get some information on that class in C-Town, baby. If you're in Detroit, if you're kind of in that western Pennsylvania area, West Virginia, it's going to be well worth the drive. I know people that have taken his classes and they absolutely love them. So, especially if you're not the competition guy, you just want to better up your barbecue for the backyard, for your wife and kids. So they say, Dad, what's for dinner? And you say barbecue, and they're like, oh, you suck at it. Take Chris Marks' class. He'll hook you right up. aceofheartsbbq.com. Thanks again to my first hour guests, Robin Medlin, Grill Girl, and Randy Owen from ThermoWorks, talking about the ThermoPet. We'll be back next Wednesday at... Wait a second. Next week, New Year, we're going to be going back to Tuesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Just like all of the signage across the internet says. Tuesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So make a note of that. I'll include it in the show notes. Don't worry. New Year, back to the old time, Tuesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Already told you who's going to be on there. Got KCBS BOD nominee. Got some grill greats talking about the grill great product. Hopefully Ted Reeder, all that great stuff. And until next Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, this is your program host and proud U.S. American, Greg Rempe. Good night now.